Welcome back, it's me, Lou. I'm here for another action figure review. Today from the Four Horsemen Studios, we are featuring the Mythic Legions Gladiator Deluxe LB, if I said that correctly. Alright, so I know very little of this figure other than what I read about it on its profile on the Four Horsemen website. I bought this loose at one of my local collectible toy stores for under $20, which for me it was a steal of a price. To the best of my knowledge, I think the only accessory I'm missing is the spear. But otherwise, I think it's almost near complete. It's a beautiful looking action figure. And the Mythic Legions line of toys is something that I've always admired from afar, but I could just never pull the trigger on it. Just because the catalog of figures, it's very extensive. And, it's just one of those things where I just had to draw the line somewhere. I kind of already collect too many toy lines as it is. But in another world, if I only collected one toy line, I would seriously just consider just collecting Mythic Legions, just because the stuff they produce, it's very awesome, it's very unique, but at the same time, there's something about the figures that feel very familiar, especially since a lot of the action figures are kind of inspired by characters from Masters of the Universe. A property which the Four Horsemen Studios worked on during the early 2000s with the Masters of the Universe 2000X line. What really sold me on this figure is that I'm just a big fan of like gladiators in general. Like for example, the Conan the Barbarian film. One of my favorite scenes is when Conan is a gladiator in the arena. I love the TV show Spartacus and of course the Gladiator films. So for me, this was a no-brainer. I just had to get this, especially since it was priced well below standard retail. Beautiful looking figure. The Gladiator belongs to the, I think, the army of Odysseus in the world of Mythic Legions. He is human in race, and as you can see here, it just looks phenomenal. The detailing is great. The paint application, it's solid. I love the shade of silver they're using for the armor pieces. Excuse me again. He does not come with an extra head. He just comes with the helmeted helm right here, which is kind of like a nice rough brass coppery finish. And it looks awesome. Really, really nice figure. As you can see on the back, there's some sockets. And then you can plug his shoulder pauldron, which we see right here. Beautifully detailed with the skull, and then you just simply plug it in, and it's slightly articulated with it being on a peg joint, so you could kind of like adjust it a little bit. There's not too much range of motion, but it's nice that it's somewhat movable. The other accessory includes his shield, a nice circular concentric design with rivets. And then you can see the handle right there. He comes with an extra pair of feet, and these are the armored toes right here. For me, I decided to opt with the barefooted feet. I think they just feel more appropriate for a gladiator fighting in the arena. Gladiators, they're kind of like just, trained to be gladiators. I think the minute you add like armored feet to him, he almost seems more like a knight, which feels a little bit more noble. Gladiators a little bit more raw, and I think that just it feels like a better match for the figure. But it's nice to have the option. Another accessory is very interesting. This is a short elven sword. So maybe this is something he took off the body of an elf during a battle. The figure stands in at about 7¼ inches to the top of the helm. For a size comparison, here it is next to a Marvel Legends action figure. So you can see it kind of really fits within the standard 6-inch scale of action figures. Scale is always going to vary from company to company, but this one kind of does a good job of, I think, staying true to the 1/12 scale. And it looks great next to the Marvel Legends figure. In terms of the articulation, like I pointed out, you can slightly move the pauldron up and down. His head looks left and right. There's some wobble movement because I believe it's on a ball joint. right there, a very large ball joint. And if you want to do a head swap, I think just go onto eBay and just do a search for Mythic Legions heads. There's always people out there selling, the different heads and accessories. So if you kind of want to like cobble together a custom, it's very easy. You have articulation at the arm. It's just very standard. There is no butterfly joint. It just goes up and down and goes outward, which for me, I think it's perfect. It doesn't need any more or less than what it has. He has a bend at the elbow, which also swivels, which negates the need for a bicep swivel. You have articulation at the wrists. There is no ab crunch or diaphragm cut. Instead, the waist swivel is on a ball joint, allowing it to swivel and kind of roll around. I know some people do like having a diaphragm cut or an ab crunch, but for me, I don't mind. The ball joint here provides enough range of movement. And for me, it's just an overall a much cleaner look, as opposed to having cuts in the torso. The skirt piece made of a very soft rubber, and it's nice that there's some gaps allowing you to move the legs without restriction. You see, you have full mobility. Single pin at the knee or single bend at the knee joint. It does swivel below the knee, which is nice. And then you have ankle articulation. So yeah, great action figure. And one of the reasons why I got it also is because I bought this not too long ago. This is the mass retail Super 7 Conan the Barbarian Deluxe DX action figure. I got this through Amazon, and I kind of needed an opponent for Conan, and I think these look awesome next to one another. If I want to try to recreate, the gladiatorial fights in Conan the Barbarian, at least have someone Conan could go head to head with. And you see this, the size is, it's pretty close in scale. They're almost identical. And then here is another Super 7 Deluxe DX figure. We have Lino from the Thundercats. So yeah, it's nice, the Mythic Legions line, and I finally got to dip my toes into the pool. If I could find more of these figures for a reasonable price, I might cherry pick and just build up maybe a tiny collection of Mythic Legions figures. They're well crafted. The Four Horsemen Studios, they have a great track record of producing wonderful looking action figures, and this is just a good example of that. Alright, so that being said, let's wrap this one up. Once again, my name is Lou. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning viewer subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support. I greatly appreciate it. So until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of toys, and most importantly, be happy. And I'll see you at the next one. Alright, later.